How's it going, everybody? Welcome to the 1IQ Sports Talk YouTube channel. Brendan and Sterling coming at you for the remaining games of week number 13. As we've already had 4 games played this week. Again, we just couldn't find time to get the Thursday video out or for the Friday video in that particular occasion. So, we're just going to be giving over for the December 1st games and the December 2nd game. And starting out with the first game this weekend, where we have the Los Angeles Chargers taking on the Atlanta Falcons, where the Chargers are only 1 point favorites heading into Atlanta.
Yeah, I mean, that's not surprising. The Chargers have been on a roll lately, even with a loss to, I believe it was the Ravens last week. Um, and the Falcons have been in free fall mode, so I see no reason why either of these teams are going to change their trajectory. Harbaugh's got the Chargers rolling, and I think they get back on track with a win over the Falcons this week and, further cement their spot into one of those wild card spots in the AFC.
Yeah, the Chargers, they're one of those teams this year that is massively overperforming where we initially thought they should be or will be going into this year. Again, we thought they were going to be probably fighting for the bottom spot with Denver in that particular division. And Harbaugh has come in and absolutely changed that culture, changed that team, and ultimately has his team playing really, really good football. They're not quite there yet to for us to potentially say Super Bowl contenders at this point, but they are without a doubt one really good offseason from ultimately being that with the right head coach and the right quarterback. But yeah, the Falcons, they've just been too roller coaster for me. They've just been too up and down. And I think the Chargers, after that tough loss against the Ravens last week, they're gonna buckle things down. They're gonna kind of get set and get reorganized. And I think they're going to not necessarily make easy work of the Falcons, because I don't think the Falcons are an easy team any individual week, but I think they win this game and they do it fairly comfortably. And so I take the Chargers on the money line and on the spread. Next game we're talking about is your Pittsburgh Steelers taking on the Cincinnati Bengals, where the Steelers go into Cincinnati and the Bengals are currently minus 3 point favorites at home.
Yeah, I mean, you know how this division goes. It's always tight, no matter how good or bad any of the teams are. We've seen the Browns, who are the worst team in the division, beat both the Ravens and the Steelers so far this season. Um, Steelers need to get a win here, though. I mean, they're looking at going 0-3 within the division after having such a good record. It's going to be hard to do in Cincinnati. Both teams are banged up right now, though, missing key players on defense, especially. It's going to come down to who wins the battle between Joe Burrow and TJ Watt. Is TJ Watt going to have Burrow's number again and be able to pick him off and sack him, or is Joe Burrow going to be able to hit Jamar Chase for 3 touchdowns and 240 yards? That's ultimately what it'll be, but it's supposed to be pretty cold. And I know Joe Burrow is a little bit nervous. He's not sure how that repaired wrist is going to perform in the cold weather because he hasn't had to do that yet. And so I'm going to bank on the Steelers defense being able to get after that Bengals offense and slow them down enough that they're not able to put up their large number of points that they've been doing, and the Steelers will squeak out a win in Cincinnati.
Yeah, this game to me ultimately boils down to it's the Steelers defense versus the Bengals offense. We have probably the best offense in the NFL going up against probably the best defense in the NFL. And you know me, I look at this Bengals team. The chances of them making the playoffs are pretty much zero at this point. It's not impossible for them to conceivably make it, but this Bengals team, they're a caged animal at the moment. They know that every single game they have to go in and get it done, because if they lose one more game, I think you can pretty much call them eliminated at this point. Now, I don't think there would be officially eliminated, but it'll go down to a percentage of like one, probably even less than 1%. And I just look at the way that Joe Burrow and Jamar Chase have been playing this year. They're looking to try to set records with just each other this season, and that Steelers defense is a little bit banged up this week. And it's going to be one of those things. Can the Steelers offense keep up with the Bengals offense? And to me, that ultimately is going to be the big question. But I just think that Steelers defense is just so good, and we have seen the Bengals struggle a little bit against some really talented defenses. And if the Steelers offense can get the run game going a little bit in this game, they can control the time potentially. And as long as Russell Wilson doesn't shove his head up his ass, then the Steelers should win this game. But this is the AFC North. This game is going to be decided by 1 point. And so I give the Steelers the win on this particular one, but I'm taking the Bengals on the point spread. Next game up, where we have the Arizona Cardinals going up to Minneapolis to take on the Minnesota Vikings, where the Vikings are minus 3.5 point favorites.
Yeah, I mean, the Vikings, I don't know. Like, I know they've got a great record, but I still feel like they're not true contenders. And the Cardinals right now, they're really fighting for their division spot. Like the Vikings, that they know they're likely to end with a wild card spot. The Cardinals could still win their division, which means we could see these teams in a playoff game in Arizona later this season. Um, Honestly, with the Cardinals coming off of a bye, I think they're going to go into Minnesota. I think they're going to surprise the Vikings. I think they're going to pull a win away from the Vikings and shock them.
Yeah, I look at these two teams and I go, last week Minnesota, they barely beat the Bears. I think the Bears offense kind of showed a little bit of that Minnesota Vikings defense, a little bit of going, you're not you don't necessarily need to be afraid of that Vikings defense as much as you possibly could. If you have a mobile quarterback, you can definitely get some good value out of that. And of course, the Cardinals have one of the best mobile quarterbacks in the league in Kyler Murray. And the only problem that I have with this game is that the Cardinals, we still look at them as maybe being like a year or two away from actually being properly competitive. And it's not like we have seen Marvin Harrison Jr. really take that elite step ultimately this year. And it's mostly just been the Trey McBride show and the running game show there for the Cardinals. I think Sam Darnold and this offense for the Vikings, if they don't turn the ball over, they're likely going to win. And I just don't see the Cardinals of having that good enough of a defense to really be able to take the ball away and really make them struggle. This is a game I could very easily see the Cardinals coming in and stealing a victory, like what you're saying. But for me, I'm just sitting back. I'm thinking that the Vikings are going to stay consistent at home. I think they're just going to be just that little bit too much for the Cardinals. But I do think the Cardinals are going to cover this spread because I think this should be a fairly close game. Next up, we have the Indianapolis Colts taking on the New England Patriots in what likely should be probably one of the weaker games this particular weekend, as the Colts go into Foxborough with a minus 2 point advantage in this.
Yeah, I mean, both of these teams are bad. This is very likely going to be a garbage bowl this week. Yeah. Um, the Colts, I don't know what happened to Jonathan Taylor this year, but he's been sort of quiet and invisible, which usually he's one of those guys we're talking about in the rushing race. But of course, with Saquon Barkley and Derrick Henry doing what they're doing, everybody else in the league is just being completely eclipsed by those two guys.
Yeah, it's not even
Um,
close.
I think the Colts find a way to get things going a bit, but ultimately this is in Foxborough. The weather is not pleasant right now in the northeast of America, and so it's going to be a messy game, which means they're not going to be able to get the passing game going very well. And Ramondre Stevenson for the Patriots has shown that he can sort of carry this team to some victories this year, and I think that ultimately is what ends up happening here is the Patriots will get themselves a win at home against the Colts and what's going to be an ugly game. Like I would not be surprised to see this finishing like 7-6.
Yeah, this is going to be one of those games where just doesn't look pretty from either side. You have rookie quarterback Drake May, who's played well, but he's also been turnover prone so far this year when he's actually played. And you have Anthony Richardson, who you just can't trust. It is very, very hard to trust Anthony Richardson week in, week out. I just look at these two teams and go, they're not evenly matched because I do think the Colts are better. And I think that's ultimately what is going to be the factor in this game is I just think the Colts around overall are just the better team. If Anthony Richardson can just not play like a jackass in this particular game, I think the Colts will have a really good shot at winning it here. And again, this Patriots team, they're gonna have a few sneaky wins like we've seen them have this year. I just don't think this is going to be one of them, and I think the Colts ultimately win this game, and I do think they actually cover the spread.
Yeah.
Next up here, we have the Seattle Seahawks going into New Jersey to take on the Jets, and the spread in this one is even. It is perfectly even at the moment. It is the New York Jets off. That is all it says. And
Yeah.
so this is it's going to be a football game for sure.
Yeah, I mean I don't know. The Jets defense has been looking better lately, but the team overall, it's in dumpster fire mode. You know, Aaron Rodgers has absolutely derailed this football team. And the Seahawks, much like the Cardinals that I mentioned earlier, they are battling it out in a very tight division race. You know, they currently hold the division lead right now with the Cardinals nipping at their heels, and the Rams and the 49ers not far behind either. So the Seahawks really do need to keep pace at this point. They control it. They have to keep winning if they want a shot at the playoffs, because this is a division where you win the division to get the playoffs. The rest of the teams are not getting a wild card spot with the records they're sitting at right now. And so I think the Seahawks go in there. Their running game has been strong. You know, Kenneth Walker's been doing great things. Geno Smith has been doing a good job of protecting the ball. And the Seahawks defense has been stepping up at key moments to shut down electric quarterbacks when they usually would be able to make a play. And so I fully expect the Seahawks defense to take the ball away from Aaron Rodgers once or twice throughout this game. And that's going to be the deciding factor that lead the Seahawks to a victory in New York.
Yeah, for me, I've given the Jets so many opportunities this year to prove me wrong in scenarios. And the last few weeks, I've just ultimately thrown my hands up and said, I'm done. I can't keep looking at the Jets and going, I trust you guys to win games against teams that you should win. Because on paper, the Jets should absolutely walk away with this victory against the Seahawks. We all know that I'm not the world's biggest fan of the Seahawks team, the way that they're built from player wise or coaching wise. I think you ultimately agree with me on a lot of things that I've said about this team. And I don't think Geno Smith has kept the ball perfectly safe. Again, he's actually leading the league in interceptions. Only has the 12 passing touchdowns, so he's even on that department. He's throwing the ball a lot, but they're not really getting it done in terms of touchdowns. But ultimately, the Jets are just a dumpster fire. They are just an absolute mess. They're not a team that I think anyone should feel comfortable with actively picking. Aaron Rodgers has not been good. He's not going to be there next year. Their coaching staff isn't going to be there next year. Again, their GM is already fired, so this is just going to be a complete tear down year next year for the Jets. And I just continue to sit back at this point and go, until they show me at a consistent level that they can ultimately go out there and win games, I can't pick them. I can't pick them, so I'm taking the Seahawks. Next up, we have the Tennessee Titans going into Washington to take on the Commanders, who have been on a little bit of a slip here at the moment. And the Commanders, however, are on a 5.5 point advantage.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of the slip that the Commanders are facing has been within their own division, which, you know, we talk all the time about division matchups. They are a different beast in this
Yes.
league. Outside of their division, they've been doing very well, and the Titans are trash. And from even a fantasy standpoint, even the bad weeks, Jane Daniels is still doing special things and putting up a lot of points fantasy wise. And so against this Titans defense, I really think the Commanders are going to be able to get themselves rolling again. They'll be able to get Terry McLaurin a lot more looks than he's been getting the last couple of weeks against the Cowboys, the Eagles, the Steelers. And so I think this is going to be one of those games that we saw earlier in the season from the Commanders where everybody's like, how is this Commanders team blowing other teams out? And they are going to completely deconstruct this Titans team with Will Levis there. Maybe we'll finally get another meme-worthy photo out of him. It's been a couple weeks since we've seen one. I think it's due this week.
Yeah, this Tennessee Titans team, we knew coming into this year they weren't going to be good. They were going to be one of the more bottom feeder teams. They've spent the last couple years trying to rebuild that offensive line. They haven't had a ton of success, but having kind of a piece together quarterback room and then a piece together wide receiver room, it's just not necessarily great. Their defense is decent. Like, don't get me wrong, they have some pretty decent players on that defensive side of the ball, and that would be the only concern that I would have for the Commanders coming into this particular game. But I just look at this Commanders team, like this is one of those games where they almost have a little bit of that get right scenario of just kind of going, we've had this little bit of a skid these last few weeks where again we've not really kind of shown that we can't compete as well as we thought we could in this division. We're now firmly in second place in this division behind the Eagles. So we have to
Mhm.
beat the teams that we're supposed to go out there and beat. And I think they do beat this Commander, or they do beat this Titans team. And I think they cover that 5 point spread.
Yeah, this is big for them too, because I mean, as far as I know, this is them going into their bye week as well.
Yes.
And so you got to get this win, get yourself on the right page before you go into that final stretch. They still play the Cowboys again, they still play the Eagles again, and they still play the Giants. And so they're still in a wild card spot. Their season's not over, so they need
Oh,
to figure it out
not by
fast.
any stretch. Yeah,
Yeah.
their season is still firmly in their control. I still think
Hmm.
even regardless of if they lose to the Eagles and Cowboys again this year, they're probably still in a chance to easily make a wild card spot. But it's one of those things where you want to go into
Yeah.
the playoffs strong as opposed to kind of fumbling the way that you have gone into the playoffs the last few times that you have. Our final 11 o'clock game of the weekend, it is the Texans going up against the Jacksonville Jaguars. Could this ultimately be the game that we see Doug Peterson get relieved of his head coach duties? We have three officially this year, and Houston Texans going into Jacksonville with a minus 3.5 point spread.
Yeah, the Texans got upset last week by the Titans that we were just talking about. Again, that's those division matchups. They're such a wild card when you're trying to pick games. I try to avoid division matchups for that reason because it's so tough to figure out. But this is a game where the Texans have to look at it and go, we cannot lose back to back to the Titans and the Jaguars. To I mean, every other team in this division is supposed to be bad compared to the Texans, especially with Trevor Lawrence being out. And so the Texans have to figure it out here. They have got to go into Jacksonville and they need to get themselves a win. If they get upset again by the Jags here after the Titans last week, I would have to say their season is complete at that point. They will not be making the playoffs if they don't win tomorrow. Um, so I am picking the Texans to win because the Jags have been bad.
Yep.
We thought they were bad before. Everybody was saying it's Trevor Lawrence. He's the problem. He went down. Oh my God, this team looks so much worse without him. It's like I've been saying, I don't think he was the problem. It's the team they've built around Trevor Lawrence that is just contributing to how badly he is looking. And so the Jags, they should want to lose out at this point. Give themselves another good pick. Try to get yourself another key piece on defense, offense, anywhere. Whoever's best available in that top three, they
Travis
need to
Hunter.
take outside the quarterback position. Yeah, that would be an excellent addition. Could you imagine Trevor Lawrence, Brian Thomas Jr., and Hunter Henry? That would be a scary, scary setup for
Yeah.
Jacksonville. But for this week, the Texans win and cover that spread.
Yeah, I've always been a little bit more skeptical with Trevor Lawrence this particular season, as we just haven't seen that growth over the year, and again the contract. But you also have to look at the team that's been around him, and the coaching staff hasn't given him much help. And the Texans, they have kind of been on this roller coaster of up and down this year. CJ Stroud hasn't been the quarterback that I think a lot of people hoped or expected him to be this particular season. And this is going to be a crucial game for him, because if the Texans, again, go out there and lose to the Jags, I'm not going to put the final nail in the coffin, but I've definitely closed the coffin, and I'm getting the nails and the hammer ready for sure, because you can't lose against the Titans and the Jags at this stage of the year, when you're supposed to be a playoff team. You're supposed to be a playoff team that can potentially battle with the Chiefs in the AFC Championship game, and they just haven't kind of looked like that team so far this year. But this is a very important game. I think the Texans are going to be locked in, especially after that loss. And I do think they're going to come away with the win. And I do think they're going to ultimately get that -3 point spread covered. But yeah, right now the Jags, they're playing for draft position, and I think Doug Peterson knows he's gone at the end of the year, and it's just one of those things of everyone's just kind of shrugging their shoulders and going, fuck it, whatever. That's kind of been the mentality. Next up, we have the Los Angeles Rams going down to New Orleans to take on the Saints, where the LA Rams are -2 point favorites.
Yeah, and the Rams need to figure out what's been going on, because they had a shot to take control of this division of theirs and they didn't take it. They've been up and down a little bit too much. It's a little reminiscent of Sean McVay's early years coaching. I know it's not him that's the problem. It's not been the coaching, but the way they've been winning and losing games, it's that same sort of roller coaster that we saw. So this would be a good shot for them to get right against this Saints team that is not very good. But the Saints have surprised some teams here, there, everywhere throughout the season. And so the Rams have to be careful that this isn't another situation of that happening. Because if the Rams lose this week and every other team in their division pulls out a win, it's not looking good for them moving forward. And ultimately, I think the Rams' issue right now is they need a new quarterback. Matt Stafford, no disrespect to him, he has been a great quarterback, but he's showing his age this year. He's not been that stud that we've seen in years past, and I think that's ultimately been the issue. They need to lean heavily on Kyren Williams, let him do his thing, let him rack up that 120, 130 yards, 2 touchdowns, and coast this team to a victory. I think the Rams do go into New Orleans. I think it'll be a tougher win than they are expecting out of the Saints, but I do think the Rams will pull a win off. They will cover that spread, because I don't think it's going to be close enough to be a field goal game. I think it's going to be a touchdown. So the Rams will win. The Rams will cover that spread, but it's going to be dicey, I think.
Yeah, I look at the Saints, and they have just been, granted, they had their first 2 wins of the season at the start of the year where they kind of shocked people, and then obviously they went on that 7-game losing streak, and now they've just been kind of riding this 2-game streak here at the moment, and they've been playing a little bit better. But I think the issues for the Saints are still going to be the major issues for the Saints. I'm not saying they're playing for draft position at this point. I think they're mostly just playing for pride and self-preservation. But with the Rams here at the moment, this is kind of actually the Rams team that I expected this year, of where there's going to be a lot of good things that they do, but there's also going to be a lot of bad things, because let's be honest here, the Rams not having draft picks for as many years as they have has finally started to catch up with them. They have Matthew Stafford playing at an okay level, but like what you said, the age is really showing. Cooper Kupp and Puka Nacua are still very, very good. Kyren Williams has been fantastic, but The issues that I have with the Rams is their O line isn't great. You're gonna have to fix that in a hurry, and you're gonna need to find some more weapons outside of Cooper Cup, Puka Nakua, and Kyron Williams. I don't think their tight end situation is great. I don't think their wide receiver room from third down is all that great. And their defense, man, their defense is led really by two rookies, and those rookies have been playing quite well. Brandon Fisk and Jared Verse are fighting each other for defensive player of the year, or rookie of the year, I should say. But you can't really have that from a team that is expected to do much. Like, you want to have those guys be the anchor of your team 2 years down the road, and it's good that they're already taking this kind of leadership role. But to have those two guys basically be the best guys on your defense, granted they were your first and second round picks, so that's what you want to have happen, but there's just so many issues with this Rams team, and they're right kind of where I expected at the start of the year, where they're just going to be kind of this team that they're going to have some good games, they're going to have some bad games, and I think this is going to potentially be one of their better games, because the Saints are just they're just playing for pride. And if you're the Rams, you're still trying to get that playoff position here at the moment. You're in the fight, you're in the hunt, you're only one game behind the current leader, so it's going to be a dogfight mentality for them the rest of the year, and I think they pull this win out, and I think they do cover that 2-point spread. Next up on our list is the Tampa Bay Buccaneers head into Charlotte to take on the Panthers. And the Buccaneers are minus 6-point favorites.
Yeah, we get to see Baker Mayfield up against his old offensive coordinator, who is the coach in Carolina now. Bryce Young's turned it around a little bit since that benching. He's looked better. This Panthers team almost pulled off an upset last week against the Chiefs, who, a lot of people are starting to cry pretenders about this Chiefs team, even being at 11-1, that very reminiscent of a lot of good teams with good records that get to the playoffs and lose in the first round. So the Chiefs are in danger over there. But this game, I don't think is going to be very competitive. Baker Mayfield is just so much better. He's got Mike Evans back now. Bucky Irving has emerged as a real threat as a number one running back for this Bucs team, which is good because Rachaad White was not getting it done. And Cade Otton has been an up-and-comer at that tight end position for them as well. So this is a good team. They're not really, playoff threat worthy at this point, in my opinion. But a couple of good drafts, building that defense, maybe solidifying, some of the wide receivers outside of Godwin and Evans, their aging wideouts. This team could be a danger in a few years. But for now, I think this Bucs team makes pretty easy work of the Panthers. I think they're going to win this game. It is a division game, so the Panthers could keep it close for sure in Carolina as well. So I think the Bucs will win, but I think it'll come down to the end of the game, and the Panthers will cover that spread.
Yeah, I look at the Bucs this year. They've been kind of one of these teams where, again, similar to the Rams, they're kind of right where I expected them to be. Baker Mayfield is playing well above his pay here at the moment. He's looking like one of the best quarterbacks in the NFL right now. Even without Mike Evans and Chris Godwin for a good portion of that year. Now, he does have Mike Evans back, but Mike Evans is still kind of playing that almost kind of just snap count role here, at least last week, and I would expect him to probably do that for the next 2 weeks, including this week, just because you need that guy to stay as healthy as you possibly can. You can't roll him out there and expect him to do the same things that he did 5 years ago. It's especially with some of the injuries that he's had to deal with this year and some of the past years. But ultimately, I think the Panthers looked better last week, and people are going to say Bryce Young looked really good, but they went up against the Chiefs, who have basically just been playing down to every opponent they've faced this year. They have been just using nothing but black magic to pull out wins, and ultimately the Chiefs did that last week. They did this week against the Raiders on Friday. I I've been very critical of Bryce Young and the Panthers, and again, this is one of those teams and one of those players where I'm gonna need to see it a little bit more often before I give any praise or credit to them. And I just think the Bucks are going to be the better team here this week. I think they're going to control this game. I think the passing game for the Bucks is going to be continue to be lethal against this Panthers team who has just kind of struggled on defense. They do have a couple of pieces there on that defensive side of the ball. JC Horn is a good young corner, but I don't think going up against Mike Evans and then whoever they have that linebacker, I don't think is going to be able to match up against Cade Orton. I think the Bucks win this game, and I think they cover that 6-point spread. Next up, we have the Philadelphia Eagles taking on the Baltimore Ravens, where the Eagles head to Maryland, and the Baltimore Ravens are minus 3-point favorites.
Yeah, this is going to be a fun game because we've got Derrick Henry against Saquon Barkley, who's going to win?
Yep.
Which of these running backs is going to be more explosive? I honestly don't know. This is a hard game for me to pick. I hate both of these teams, Philly being the cross-state rival for Pittsburgh and Ravens being the division rival for Pittsburgh. So, either way, I'm indifferent as to who wins. I think because the Eagles have that better defense, that is going to be what turns the tide in this game. I think both these running backs are going to be very good. It's just, I think the Eagles will be able to get more done in the passing game than the Ravens will, just because the Eagles defense is better than that Ravens D. And so I do think that the Eagles are going to go into Maryland and upset Baltimore. It's going to be a close game though. Honestly, with how Justin Tucker's been playing, I could see this game ending on a missed field goal by Baltimore, which hands the Eagles the win.
Yeah, for me, this is a battle of two teams that are kind of similar in a sense on their offensive side of the ball. You have a mobile quarterback who has an elite running back helping him and also just playing otherworldly here at the moment. With the passing game for the Eagles, I do think it's better than the Ravens because they have more options. And then the defense for the Eagles has been playing absolutely lights out this year. And for the Ravens, their defense hasn't been that good. Is Roquan Smith going to be playing this week? Because I obviously know he was out last week. And if you don't have him out there, that's going to be a big, big loss for this Ravens team. But ultimately, what is going to come down for me in this game is going to be coaching. We have seen Nick Sirianni have some very boneheaded decisions, even in a bunch of the Eagles' wins this year, where a lot of people are sitting back going like, dude, what are you doing? Like, and I think a lot of the Eagles fans are kind of in this mode right now where they're like, we're winning, so we can't fire him, but please God, just give us a reason. Just give us just that one reason to let you go, because they're kind of in that awkward scenario. And I think the Ravens are just that slightly better coach team. And I think that is what is ultimately going to cause them to win this game, is just there's going to be a Sirianni moment where it's going to be just coaching blunder where the Eagles ultimately falter in this game. And I think the Ravens walk away with this one. And I I think it's going to be close enough that the Eagles will cover the spread though. Our Sunday night football game of the week, where we have the 49ers going into Buffalo for what is going to be just a snowball game. And Buffalo Bills are minus 6-point favorites, as they rightly should be.
Yeah, this game might not happen on Sunday night. This might be a Monday night game. This might be a Tuesday night game. This is very reminiscent of that wild card matchup the Bills had last year against the Steelers, where they had that lake effect snow squalls happening, and it dumped just feet of snow, like multiple.
Yeah.
Like it just piled up, and it was too much for the officials to really approve letting the game be played. I think that might end up happening with the way the forecast is looking in Buffalo right now.
Strong possibility.
Whether the game happens Sunday night, Monday night, or Tuesday night, this 49ers team has not quite had it. people are getting on Christian McCaffrey for not looking like an MVP, but in his defense, he hasn't played a lot this season. It takes a while to build up into that NFL ready state when you're coming back from an injury. So I don't put any of that fault on Christian McCaffrey. He's still been doing great things. But with that kind of weather and, coming off an Achilles issue throughout the season, I don't think he's going to be very effective. And when he's not effective, this 49ers team is kind of flat. The Bills, the Bills are playing right now to show that they are the ones to take away this crown from the Chiefs, and they haven't given me any reason to think they won't do that. In Buffalo, they'll be comfortable playing this. Josh Allen loves playing in this weather. He's always running the ball. I would not be surprised to see him be the leading rusher among quarterbacks at the end of this week, just because of that nasty weather and the way he just likes to take the ball and run it upfield when it's gross like this. I think the Bills win this game, and I think they embarrass the 49ers a little bit because of that weather that's involved. I don't think the 49ers are going to be able to hang. Brock Purdy's not playing as far as I know, and Braden Allen was not that
He was
impressive
terrible.
last week.
He was horrible.
The interesting dynamic this week is, we could see a play call of, number 17 Allen passes to number 1 Samuel, and we won't know which team actually completed that because both teams have a number 17 Allen at quarterback and a number 1 Samuel at wide receivers. So that's going to be a fun, interesting gimmick throughout the week, but ultimately, Bills win this game. Bills cover the spread.
Yeah, Josh Allen is going to be coming into this game after the bye week. He finally got his ring this weekend. Obviously, he got engaged to Haley Steinfeld over the bye week, but I just look at this 49ers team. Brock Purdy's coming in questionable. So who knows if he's going to play. And if he does play, he's going to be playing banged up. Trent Williams is out for this particular game. Aaron Banks is out. This team is just banged up. Nick Bosa is going to be out for this game. I think they might just have too many injuries that are going to be piling up, and this really just has not been the 49ers year. They've just dealt with too much at this point. And the Bills, they're going to be coming into this game looking to show everyone we're going to beat the teams that we're supposed to beat. And this is Buffalo Bills style of weather. Whether, again, happens on Sunday night, Monday night, or Tuesday night. The Bills, they play in that kind of condition. We talked about it last year with the wild card game where the Steelers went in, and the conversation was, oh, well, the Steelers play in that kind of weather too. Well, not like the Bills play in that kind of weather. It's different up there in Buffalo. And I just think the 49ers team, they're just not going to have it this particular week. And it's going to be one of those things where the Bills kind of sit them down and say, listen, it's not your year, guys. Take a back seat, try to get healthier, and we're just going to get our 10th win of the season and almost confirm us into the playoffs. Again, they're the only team to beat the Chiefs so far this year. They're battling for that number 1 spot. They just need one other team to get that win against that Chiefs team, and then they get that number 1 spot, and they have just looked so good. But yeah, I'm taking the Bills on the money line and the spread. This is one of those games where I would feel pretty comfortable taking that bet. And for our Monday night game of the week, we have the Cleveland Browns going into Denver to take on the Broncos. And the Denver Broncos are -5.5 points.
Yeah, I mean, the Denver Broncos have surprised people this year. Sean Payton got the quarterback he wanted and has shown why. Bo Nix, none of us were high on him coming out of the draft. Like, he looked all right. We all thought he was a couple years away, and I still think he is. He's improved throughout this season. I don't think this Broncos team is going to shock anybody when the playoffs roll around, but at this point, with how they're playing, I do think they are a playoff team. I think they have a very good shot at getting that final wild card spot in the AFC. And I think they keep trending towards that when they get a win this week over the Cleveland Browns. Cleveland Browns have 3 wins this year. 2 of them have come within their own division, which we know is a tough, gritty division where any team can win, even a 2-win team. And so I don't think the Browns are going to have enough to go into Denver and be able to pull out a win. I know a lot of high emotions right now after a big win last week for them. Jameis Winston has been performing well. This Browns team, if they don't get a quarterback in the draft, then I think they need to seriously consider, re-upping Jameis Winston and having him be their number one because Deshaun Watson's just bad. You look back and all the way back to Baker Mayfield, every quarterback that has played in Cleveland outside of Deshaun Watson has outperformed Deshaun Watson. And he's not the guy for this team. So props to Jameis. He has been looking good, having a big resurgence in his career. I think he's going to get a starting job somewhere next year, either way, if it's not
Without
in
a doubt.
Cleveland. There are some teams that are going to be looking for a guy that can give that spark. But I just don't think they're going to be able to go into Mile High, in that high elevation and get a win against this Denver team. Peyton is really good at getting his team ready for primetime games.
Yes.
Not to say Kevin Stefanski is not, but I just think the Broncos are going to have that little bit more this week. The 5.5-point spread, I don't think is going to happen. So I am taking the Broncos to win, but I think Cleveland will keep it close enough to cover that spread.
I just look at this particular game and I go, if we see the Browns that we saw last week against the Steelers, I think they do beat the Broncos. But that defense was playing with such emotions against that division rival. Again, TJ or Miles Garrett basically was just saying to TJ Watt from across the field, I'm pissed off that you didn't congratulate me on the Defensive Player of the Year award, and I'm gonna outshine you tonight in that game. And he really did outshine TJ Watt in that game. Jameis Winston, again, is just playing with just pure emotion, and boy, oh boy, did we get some memes from Jameis Winston that particular week. But this is gonna be one of those interesting games for sure because I just don't know if Cleveland can play with that same level of emotion that they did last week. Now, I think the Browns are better than what their record shows. I think they are better than a 3-8 team. I think they are probably they should realistically be on that same kind of record wise that we've talked about with the Rams and Bucks, of where that's kind of where we expected them to be. But again, having Deshaun Watson play for the entire season really hurt them. I think if it was Jameis Winston from the get go, we do see that Browns team as like a 5-6, 6-5 type of a record so far this year. But the Broncos are a tough team to play. If this was in Cleveland, I might be having a different answer, but since Denver is such a tough place to go and play due to that altitude, I don't think the Browns are going to have enough to ultimately get this one out, but I do think it's going to be close, and so I take the Broncos on the money line, but I take the Browns on the spread because that 5.5, it just feels like with this Browns defense that they'll be able to control Bo Nix just a little bit more, and we'll see what Miles Garrett can do. Can he ultimately just win it for his team? But that is going to do it here for the Game Picks video of the week. Thank you all very much for watching. For Sterling, I'm Brendan saying thank you very much. Peace.